Life will test you in ways you never expected. Sometimes everything hits at once, your plans fall apart. People disappoint you, your heart feels heavy, and your mind becomes your biggest enemy. You start wondering, why does happiness feel so far away? But Buddhism teaches something most people never discover. Happiness is not something you wait for, search for, or chase. Happiness is something you create inside yourself, even when life hurts the most. In this video, you will learn the 7 Buddhist principles that help you stay happy and positive, even on your worst days, even when your heart is tired, even when your mind feels heavy, even when everything seems upside down. If you learn these 7 lessons, life will no longer control your inner peace. You will. 1. You don't need a perfect life to feel peace, only a present mind. Most people spend their entire lives chasing a perfect version of life that does not exist. They believe that peace will come later, when they get the perfect job, when they find the perfect partner, when they make more money, when their problems disappear, or when their mind finally behaves the way they want it to. But this mindset traps them in constant suffering, because they keep postponing their peace to some imaginary future. Buddhism teaches that suffering doesn't come from a lack of perfection. It comes from a lack of presence. You become unhappy when your mind refuses to stay where your life is actually happening. When your mind travels to the past, it digs up regrets, mistakes, and memories you can no longer change. This creates sadness and guilt. When your mind runs toward the future, it imagines fear, uncertainty, and possibilities that might never happen, creating anxiety. The more your mind wanders away from the present moment, the heavier your emotions become. That is why even people who have everything can still feel empty, because their mind is never truly here. Happiness does not live in the past, because the past no longer exists. Happiness does not live in the future, because the future hasn't arrived yet. Peace exists only in the present moment, because this is the only place where life is real. When your mind learns to sit exactly where your body is in this breath, in this experience, in this moment, your problems stop multiplying. You begin to see that right now, in this second, you are safe. You have survived every difficult moment so far. You have the strength to handle this moment too. Being present doesn't mean your life is perfect. It doesn't mean all your problems disappear. It simply means you stop making them bigger by replaying them in your mind or by imagining the worst. When you gently guide your mind back to what is happening right now, your breath, your senses, your surroundings, your fears soften and your worries lose their power. You don't need control over everything in your life to feel calm. You don't need to fix every mistake to feel happy. You don't need to achieve every goal to feel positive. What you truly need is the ability to return to the present moment again and again, especially when your thoughts start dragging you away. The more you practice this, the quieter your mind becomes. Even on your worst days, when everything feels heavy, coming back to the present moment creates a small space of peace where you can breathe, think clearly, and feel grounded again. The truth is simple. Happiness grows from presence, not perfection. And the moment you learn to bring your mind back to now, the storms inside you begin to calm, and life becomes lighter, even if nothing else has changed. 2. Stop carrying what isn't yours. Release the emotional weight. One of the biggest reasons people lose their happiness is because they carry emotional weight that doesn't belong to them. Most of the stress you feel is not coming from your own life. It is coming from the expectations, opinions, and emotional baggage of others. You carry what people said to you years ago. You carry the judgments of friends, the disappointment of family, the pressure of society, and the mistakes of people who hurt you. You carry emotions that were never yours to hold, and over time this heavy load makes you feel tired, confused, and disconnected from yourself. Buddhism teaches that suffering begins the moment you attach your peace to something outside of your control. When you let someone's words define your worth, you suffer. When you let someone's behavior decide your mood, you suffer. When you let someone's expectations decide your life, you suffer. Happiness becomes impossible when your heart is crowded with noise that other people place there. Most people don't realize it, but a lot of their sadness is borrowed. A lot of their fear is borrowed. A lot of their insecurity is borrowed. You weren't born doubting yourself. The world taught you to. You weren't born feeling unworthy. Someone made you believe that. You weren't born stressed. You absorbed stress from the people around you. And now, without noticing, you walk through life holding emotional weight that doesn't belong to you. You cannot feel light while carrying what drains your spirit. You cannot feel positive while holding negativity that was injected into you. Happiness grows when you decide to set down the weight you never needed to carry in the first place. This means letting go of other people's expectations and replacing them with your own truth. It means releasing the pressure to please everyone and choosing to honor your own peace. It means understanding that you are not responsible for fixing anyone's emotions, rescuing anyone from their choices, or carrying anyone's unresolved pain. Releasing emotional weight is not about avoiding people. It is about reclaiming your space, your boundaries, and your energy. It is about recognizing the difference between what is your responsibility and what is not. When you finally put down the emotional load that was never yours, you will feel yourself breathing differently, lighter, clearer, more grounded, and you will realize that your happiness was not missing. It was simply buried under weight that was never meant for you. The moment you stop carrying what isn't yours, you make space inside your heart for peace to grow again. And in that space, positivity becomes natural, not forced, not fake, but real and effortless. 3. Acceptance is, not weakness it is, the beginning of inner freedom. Many people misunderstand acceptance. They think accepting something means giving up, losing, or surrendering to a life they don't want. But Buddhism teaches a completely different truth. Acceptance is not weakness, it is freedom. Most of your suffering comes from resisting reality. You fight what already happened. You fight the emotions you feel. You fight the situations you cannot control. You fight life as if struggling harder will change the past or force the future into a shape that pleases you. This constant resistance drains your energy, increases your stress, and steals your peace. Acceptance does not mean you approve of everything. It does not mean the pain was okay, the disappointment was fair, or the situation was easy. Acceptance simply means you stop wasting your life fighting what has already occurred. You stop arguing with reality. You stop holding on to the belief that things should be different than they are. When you accept something, you neutralize its emotional grip on you. You take back your power from the situation that once controlled you. Think about how much suffering comes from resisting the truth. You don't want to accept that a relationship ended, so you keep hurting. You don't want to accept that someone disappointed you, so you keep replaying it. You don't want to accept that life changed, so you become stuck in the past. Resistance is like trying to swim against a river. No matter how hard you fight, the river will always be stronger. Acceptance is choosing to stop fighting the current and learning how to float. It doesn't take strength, it creates strength. When you finally accept reality as it is, instead of how you wish it was, something powerful happens. Your mind becomes calm. You stop creating extra layers of suffering around the pain. You stop adding stories, assumptions, and fears to the experience. You meet life exactly where it is, and from that place, you can finally make clear, intelligent, peaceful decisions. Acceptance opens the door to true change. You cannot change anything you refuse to acknowledge. When you accept your situation, you see your choices more clearly. You understand what you can control and what you cannot. You stop wasting energy on the impossible and begin investing it into what is actually possible. Acceptance is not the end of your journey. It is the point where your real healing begins. People who think acceptance is weakness are the ones who spend their lives fighting battles. They can never win battles against time, against truth, against the nature of life. But those who embrace acceptance become unshakable. They do not break easily because they work with life instead of against it. They do not collapse in pain because they understand pain instead of resisting it. They do not lose themselves in disappointment because they allow life to move the way life naturally moves. When you learn to accept what you cannot change, you reclaim your inner freedom. And in that freedom, happiness has room to rise again, quietly, gently, but powerfully. 4. Your thoughts shape your reality. Choose them with awareness. One of the most powerful teachings in Buddhism is that your mind creates your world. Not the outside world, not your circumstances, not what others say or do. Your thoughts are what shape your inner reality. Two people can go through the same situation and feel completely different because the difference is not in the experience, but in the meaning their mind attaches to it. This is why some people break under small difficulties, while others stay peaceful even during storms. Their thoughts are not the same, so their emotional world is not the same. Most people don't realize how much control their thoughts have over their happiness. A single negative thought repeated over and over becomes a belief. A belief repeated long enough becomes your identity. And once something becomes your identity, it becomes your reality. This is how people accidentally create their own suffering without meaning to. They believe every negative thought their mind produces. They follow every fearful story, and they give power to every insecurity. They don't question anything. They simply accept whatever the mind says as truth. But Buddhism teaches that you are not your thoughts. You are the awareness behind those thoughts. You are the one who notices them, not the one who is controlled by them. When you understand this difference, your entire experience of life changes. Instead of being dragged by your emotions, you begin to observe them. Instead of letting your thoughts control your mood, you decide which thoughts deserve your attention and which do not. Instead of believing everything your mind says, you start asking, is this thought true? Is it helpful? Does it make my life better or worse? A thought is only a sentence inside your mind, it is not a fact. But when you unconsciously feed a negative thought with fear, with attention, or with emotional reaction, it grows stronger, it becomes louder, it becomes heavier, and eventually it becomes a mental habit that shapes how you see yourself, how you see others, and how you see life. Happiness requires breaking this habit. Choosing your thoughts with awareness does not mean replacing every negative thought with a fake positive one. It simply means refusing to water the thoughts that hurt you. When a thought tells you that you are not enough, you do not argue with it, you let it pass. When a thought tells you everything will go wrong, you don't panic, you recognize it as fear pretending to be truth. When a thought tells you to overthink, to compare, to doubt, or to blame yourself, you do not follow it blindly. You take a breath, observe it, and let it go. This is how peace is created, not by forcing positivity, but by refusing to feed negativity. Your mind is like a garden. If you leave it unattended, weeds will grow on their own. But if you take care of it with patience and awareness, you can grow clarity, kindness, gratitude, resilience, and confidence. Even on hard days, even when life is painful, you can still protect your mental garden from being overtaken by destructive thoughts. When you begin to choose your thoughts instead of letting them choose you, everything in your life starts to change. Your emotions become calmer, your reactions become wiser, your heart becomes lighter, and slowly you begin to realize something life-changing. Happiness is not something that comes from outside. It is something that begins with the thoughts you choose to nourish inside your own mind. 5. Your emotional energy is your inner climate. Protect it before you protect anything else. Every day, you live inside an emotional climate that you create without even realizing it. Some days your heart feels warm, open, and steady. Other days it feels cloudy, heavy, or chaotic. And most people assume that their inner climate is controlled by the outside world, by people, circumstances, problems, or unexpected events. But Buddhism teaches that your emotional energy is something you can protect, manage, and shape with great power. Just like a gardener protects the soil that grows their plants, your emotional energy is not just how you feel. It affects how you think, how you speak, how you react, what decisions you make, how much peace you experience, and even how you see yourself. When your energy is low, everything feels difficult. Simple tasks become heavy. Small problems feel overwhelming. Negative thoughts become louder and harder to ignore. But when your energy is calm and protected, life feels more manageable. Problems appear smaller. Emotions feel less threatening. You respond with patience instead of panic. This is why protecting your energy is not something optional, it is essential. Yet most people give their emotional energy away without hesitation. They let people drain them because they don't want to disappoint anyone. They absorb the negativity of others because they think it's rude to walk away. They say yes to things they don't want to do because they fear judgment. They keep toxic relationships alive because they confuse loyalty with self-sacrifice. They listen to everyone's problems while ignoring their own. They stay in environments that poison their peace because they fear change. And slowly, their emotional energy weakens until even the smallest issues feel unbearable. Buddhism teaches that protecting your energy is an act of wisdom, not selfishness. You cannot pour from a cup that is consistently emptied. You cannot be strong for others when you are weak within yourself. You cannot build inner peace while allowing everyone access to your mind. Protecting your energy does not mean avoiding people forever. It means understanding which connections nourish you and which connections drain you. It means learning that not every conversation needs your response, not every insult deserves your attention, and not every request requires your yes. Your energy becomes stronger when you create small daily habits that guard your inner climate. This can be something as simple as taking 5 minutes of silence before starting your day, or choosing not to argue with someone who is committed to misunderstanding you, or stepping away from people who treat your peace like it is worthless. It can be choosing not to scroll through negativity, choosing to breathe before reacting, or choosing to walk away from things that disturb your heart. When you protect your emotional energy, you stop letting the world decide your mood. You stop giving temporary people permanent power. You stop letting negativity enter your mind without permission. And slowly, your inner climate begins to change. Your heart becomes more stable. Your thoughts become more peaceful. Your reactions become more controlled. Your life becomes more aligned with the person you truly want to be. The truth is simple. Your emotional energy is your most valuable resource. It determines the quality of your life far more than your circumstances do. You cannot control everything that happens around you, but you can absolutely control what you allow inside you. And once you choose to guard your emotional climate with intention, you will discover that happiness is not something fragile. It is something that grows strong when protected. 6. Happiness is not something you chase, it is something you create by letting go of inner resistance. One of the most misunderstood truths about happiness is the belief that it is something you must chase, find, or earn. People spend years running after happiness the way someone runs after a moving shadow, always close enough to see it, but never close enough to truly catch it. The harder they chase it, the faster it moves away. Buddhism teaches the opposite. Happiness is not something outside of you. It is not something that appears only when life becomes perfect. It is not something that arrives when everything finally goes your way. Happiness is a natural state that arises when the mind stops resisting life. Inner resistance is the invisible force that destroys peace. It is the voice inside you that says, "I should be somewhere else by now. I shouldn't feel this way. My life should look different." Or, Things must happen the way I want. Resistance turns small problems into heavy suffering by creating a mental battle with reality. You don't suffer because life is painful. You suffer because you fight the pain, deny it, run from it, or refuse to accept it. The more you resist, the more you struggle, and the more you struggle, the more unhappy you become. Letting go of resistance does not mean giving up or becoming passive. It means allowing life to flow without trying to control every detail. It means understanding that emotions come and go naturally, that circumstances rise and fall, and that nothing in life stays the same forever. Not joy, not pain, not success, not failure. When you stop resisting the natural flow of life, you create space inside your mind where peace can settle. And in that space, happiness begins to grow effortlessly. People often believe that they need reasons to be happy. But Buddhism teaches that you only need one thing: a mind that is not constantly fighting the present moment. Think about it. Most of your stress does not come from what is happening right now. It comes from your mental story about what is happening, from your expectations of how things should be, or from your fear of how things might become. The present moment is rarely unbearable. What's unbearable is the resistance you attach to it. For example, the sadness is not the problem. The belief that you shouldn't be sad anymore is what hurts. The disappointment is not what breaks you. The belief that life shouldn't be this way is what creates the suffering. Letting go of resistance means allowing yourself to feel what you feel without judging it. It means letting situations be what they are without forcing them to match your expectation. It means trusting that life has its own timing, rhythm, and intelligence. When you let go of the need to control everything, you begin to see the truth. Life is not attacking you. Life is moving you. Life is shaping you. Life is cleansing what you no longer need, even if the process feels uncomfortable. Happiness becomes more natural the moment you stop trying to make every emotion pleasant. Positive people are not those who never feel pain. They are people who do not resist it when it comes. They don't run from discomfort. They let it pass. They don't fight change. They allow it to unfold. They don't cling to what is leaving. They trust that letting go creates space for something new. And because they live with this open-hearted acceptance, their inner world stays light, calm, and steady, even when life becomes chaotic. When you release your resistance, you begin to experience life differently. You stop feeling trapped by your emotions because you understand they are temporary visitors. You stop fearing uncertainty because you realize that life has always changed and you have always adapted. You stop trying to force outcomes because you trust that what belongs to you will find you. And most importantly, you stop postponing your happiness because you realize it was never waiting for the perfect moment, it was waiting for the perfect mindset. The truth is simple. Happiness is what naturally rises when the mind stops pushing, controlling, and fighting. It is not created through effort, it is revealed when resistance dissolves. When you learn to let life move without force, your heart becomes lighter, your mind becomes clearer, and your spirit becomes stronger. And in this state, even the hardest days cannot steal your peace. 7. Gratitude is the most powerful path to happiness, not because life is perfect, but because your perspective becomes wiser. Gratitude is one of the simplest words in the world, yet it contains one of the deepest truths about the human heart. Most people misunderstand gratitude. They think gratitude is something you practice when everything is going well, when you finally succeed, when your problems disappear, when life becomes kind, when people treat you the way you wish they would. But Buddhism teaches that gratitude is not a reaction to a perfect life. It is the ability to recognize truth, beauty, and possibility even inside an imperfect one. Gratitude does not mean ignoring pain. It does not mean pretending everything is good. It does not mean forcing positivity. Instead, Gratitude is the art of shifting your attention from what is missing to what is present, from what is painful to what is meaningful, from what is uncertain to what is still possible. People suffer the most, not because life is always hard, but because the mind becomes conditioned to focus on what is wrong. The human mind has a habit of magnifying problems, replaying mistakes, remembering insults, imagining worst-case scenarios, and comparing life to someone else's highlight reel. When the mind gets trapped in this loop, it becomes blind to everything that is still supporting you, guiding you, nourishing you, or blessing you. Gratitude is the practice of removing that blindness slowly and gently until you begin to see your life clearly, not as a collection of missing pieces, but as an unfolding experience filled with lessons, strength, growth, and small daily miracles that you once overlooked. Gratitude is powerful because it changes your emotional state without changing your circumstances. Your problems may remain the same, but your heart becomes stronger. Your situation may not improve instantly, but your ability to handle it improves. Gratitude doesn't erase pain, but it creates space around the pain, giving you room to breathe and think with clarity. When you practice gratitude, you train your mind to stop rushing toward fear and start resting in awareness. You learn to anchor yourself to what is stable instead of drowning in what is unstable. This shift seems small, but it transforms everything: your mood, your thoughts, your relationships, your decisions, your resilience, and your outlook on life. Most people wait for big events to feel grateful. A new job, a major achievement, a perfect relationship, a sudden breakthrough. But Buddhism teaches that the deeper form of gratitude happens in the small, silent moments. When you notice the calmness of your breath, when you appreciate the warmth of sunlight on your face, when you realize how resilient you have been this entire time, when you recognize the strength you gained from past wounds, when you understand that even after everything, you are still here, still learning, still capable of rebuilding, still capable of loving, still capable of growing. Happiness is built on these small recognitions, not on big accomplishments. Gratitude is also the antidote to comparison. In the modern world, people constantly measure their worth against others. Someone else is happier, richer, more attractive, more confident, more successful. This comparison steals joy before you even get a chance to feel it. Gratitude shifts the mind away from what others have and brings it back to your own life. It reminds you that your journey is unique, your timeline is personal, and your growth cannot be compared with anyone else's. When the mind stops comparing, it stops suffering unnecessarily. Another powerful truth is that gratitude softens the heart. When life hurts, the heart becomes tight, guarded, and defensive. You begin to see everything through the lens of fear. Gratitude gently opens the heart again, not by ignoring the hurt, but by reminding you that pain is not the whole story. There are moments of kindness, moments of support, moments of progress, moments of love, moments of beauty. Even small ones count. Gratitude gathers these moments like small lights and brings them together until the darkness in your heart feels less overwhelming. It gives you reasons to continue, reasons to hope, reasons to believe that good days still exist ahead of you. Practicing gratitude does not mean denying pain. In fact, gratitude becomes the most transformative when life is difficult. Anyone can feel grateful when things are going well, but it takes awareness, discipline, and wisdom to practice gratitude when your heart is breaking, when your plans fail, when you feel lost, when you carry sadness, or when your mind feels heavy. And it is precisely in these moments that gratitude becomes medicine. A small gratitude practice, something as simple as saying, "I am thankful for this breath," or "I am grateful for the chance to try again tomorrow," can stabilize you emotionally in ways you never expected. It reminds you that even in pain, there is still something within you that is alive, strong, and capable of healing. Gratitude also rewires the brain. Neuroscience has proven what Buddhism taught thousands of years ago. Where your attention goes, your emotional life follows. The more you focus on what is painful, the more pain you experience. The more you focus on what is working, what is steady, what is present, the more peace you create inside your mind. Gratitude literally strengthens the mental pathways that lead to happiness, resilience, and calmness. It builds the habit of noticing what is good, so your mind naturally begins to seek the good instead of the bad. It's important to understand that gratitude is not a feeling, it is a practice. You don't wait to feel grateful before practicing gratitude. You practice gratitude so that you can eventually feel grateful. Feelings follow awareness, not the other way around. Some days, gratitude will come easily. Other days, it will feel difficult. But even on difficult days, the smallest attempt counts. Gratitude is more like exercising a muscle than flipping a switch. It grows with repetition, patience, and consistency. Even noticing one thing a day can begin to change your emotional landscape. Gratitude also strengthens your relationship with yourself. When you begin to appreciate your effort, your growth, your endurance, your inner battles, your quiet strength, and the way you show up even when you feel exhausted, you stop viewing yourself through the lens of failure. You stop being your own enemy. You stop punishing yourself for being human. Gratitude turns the harsh inner critic into a gentle inner companion. It teaches you to say, "I am proud of how far I've come," instead of, "I am not enough." That shift alone can change the entire course of your life. In the end, gratitude is not about convincing yourself that your life is perfect. It is about recognizing that even an imperfect life contains pockets of beauty, meaning, and possibility. It is about understanding that happiness does not come from having everything you want, but from appreciating everything you already have. It is about seeing that the present moment is not empty. It is filled with experiences, lessons, and opportunities that are trying to teach you something. Gratitude is the act of noticing them, acknowledging them, and allowing them to touch your heart. When you live with gratitude, you start waking up with a calmer mind. You move through the day with a lighter heart. You face challenges with more courage. You connect with others with more compassion. You stop chasing happiness and instead begin to generate happiness. And slowly, almost silently, you become someone who can stay positive even in pain, who can stay hopeful even in uncertainty, and who can stay peaceful even when the world around you is loud and chaotic. Gratitude becomes the foundation of your inner world, a steady, unshakable ground on which happiness naturally grows. 8. Inner peace comes from detachment, not from possession, control, or constant expectation. One of the deepest teachings in Buddhism is the understanding that human beings suffer not because life is cruel, but because the mind attaches itself to everything it touches. You attach yourself to people, to outcomes, to habits, to identities, to expectations, to memories, to ideas of how life should be. And the moment you attach, you become emotionally dependent on something you cannot fully control. This attachment becomes a chain that ties your happiness to things that are fragile, temporary, and constantly changing. Detachment, on the other hand, is not about abandoning life or not caring about anything. It is the art of loving, living, and experiencing fully without losing yourself, without gripping too tightly, and without expecting everything to behave according to your desires. Most suffering begins when your mind demands permanence in a world built on impermanence. You want relationships to stay the same forever. You want people to never change. You want feelings to last exactly as they are. You want situations to unfold exactly the way you imagine. You want comfort, certainty, security, and emotional guarantees. But life does not operate this way. Everything you experience, every emotion, every moment, every bond, every phase moves, changes, grows, fades, and evolves. When you fight this natural flow, you create pain. When you accept it, you create peace. Detachment does not mean distancing yourself emotionally or becoming cold. It means refusing to hold on to things so tightly that their presence becomes your identity and their absence becomes your destruction. It means recognizing that life gives and takes constantly, not to punish you, but to teach you how to appreciate without clinging, how to love without owning, and how to live without fear of loss. When you detach, you allow people to be human, situations to unfold naturally, and emotions to pass without trapping you. A common source of unhappiness is the belief that external things will bring internal peace. People think, "I'll be happy when I get this job. I'll feel calm when I'm in a relationship. I'll feel worthy when I get validation. I'll feel secure when I get more money." Or, "I'll feel good when life becomes easier." But these forms of happiness are fragile because they depend on things outside of you. The moment something changes, your happiness collapses. True peace is built on understanding that nothing outside you is guaranteed, and that is exactly why you must anchor yourself inside. Detachment is the ability to participate in life wholeheartedly while remembering that nothing is truly yours. Not people, not emotions, not achievements, not even your own thoughts. Everything is temporary. Everything is borrowed. Everything is passing. This realization is not depressing, it is liberating. When you stop clinging, you stop fearing. When you stop expecting, you stop being disappointed. When you stop trying to control everything, you become lighter, freer, and more present. Think of detachment as holding life with open palms instead of clenched fists. With open palms, you can appreciate what arrives without trying to trap it. You can allow what wants to leave without destroying your peace. You can love people deeply without confusing their presence for your survival. You can enjoy moments fully without fearing their end. You can let emotions pass through you without letting them define you. Most people confuse attachment with love. They believe that loving someone means needing them, clinging to them, or making them the center of their happiness. But attachment creates pressure, fear, insecurity, and pain. It makes you possessive, anxious, controlling, and afraid of losing what you hold. True love grows in freedom. When you detach, you allow love to breathe. You love not because the person fills your emptiness, but because your heart naturally overflows. You no longer say, "I need you to be okay," but "I choose you, but my peace remains inside me." Detachment also applies to your inner world. You become attached to your own stories. The story of being a victim, the story of being unworthy, the story of being unlucky, the story of being broken, the story of being misunderstood. These stories may feel familiar, but they chain you to suffering. Detachment means releasing these stories gently. It means allowing yourself to grow out of old identities, old wounds, and old narratives that no longer serve you. You realize that you are not defined by what happened to you. You are defined by how you rise from it. Expectations are another form of attachment that silently destroys happiness. You expect people to behave a certain way. You expect life to follow your timeline. You expect outcomes to match your hopes. And when reality does not match your expectations, you feel betrayed even though it was your expectation, not reality, that created the pain. When you detach from expectations, you begin to accept life as it is. Acceptance does not mean giving up. It means seeing clearly. It means responding to life with wisdom instead of reacting with frustration. It means walking through the world with less tension and more freedom. Detachment gives you emotional power. You no longer break when things change. You no longer collapse when people disappoint you. You no longer lose yourself in the ups and downs of circumstances. Instead, you become steady, grounded, calm, and resilient. You begin to understand that life is not something to grip, but something to experience. You stop swimming against the current and start floating with the flow. When you master detachment, you become naturally happier because you stop depending on external stability for internal peace. You begin to realize that peace was never out there. It was always something you had to cultivate inside. You become aware of your breath, your presence, your choices, your responses. You discover that you can be calm even in uncertainty, hopeful even in struggle, and balanced even in chaos. Detachment teaches you that losing something is not the end. It is often the beginning of clarity, evolution, insight, or freedom. It teaches you that pleasure, success, love, sadness, and challenges all come and go like waves. None of them stay forever, and none of them define you. They are simply experiences passing through your life. And when you allow them to come and go without clinging, you live in a state of peace that cannot be shaken. In the end, detachment is not about removing yourself from life. It is about becoming so deeply grounded that life can no longer pull you in every direction. It is about participating fully while remaining free inside. It is about caring deeply without collapsing emotionally. It is about loving without losing your center. It is about living without fear of loss. And once you live this way, happiness becomes something steady, consistent, and natural, not because everything around you is perfect, but because nothing inside you is breaking anymore. 9. Healing begins when you stop running from yourself. Face your inner world with courage, not fear. One of the greatest truths in Buddhism is that a person cannot find true happiness until they stop running from themselves. Most people spend their entire lives avoiding their inner world without even realizing it. They distract themselves with noise, with work, with people, with entertainment, with habits, and with endless thinking. They keep themselves busy, not because they enjoy the busyness, but because silence forces them to meet the parts of themselves they have buried. The truth is simple. You cannot heal what you refuse to face. You cannot grow from what you constantly avoid. You cannot transform the pain you run away from. Healing begins the moment you decide to stop escaping your inner world. Running from yourself takes many forms. Some people drown themselves in overthinking to avoid listening to their heart. Some hide behind anger so they don't have to feel sadness. Some jump from one distraction to another because they fear being alone with their thoughts. Some blame others to avoid taking responsibility. Some pretend to be strong because they fear being seen as vulnerable. Some cling to the past because they are afraid of the unknown future. Every avoidance is a form of inner escape, and every escape keeps you stuck in suffering. Buddhism teaches that pain itself is not the enemy. The real suffering comes from your fear of pain. When you are afraid to feel, afraid to introspect, afraid to acknowledge wounds, afraid to sit with discomfort, the fear grows bigger than the pain itself. Running from your inner world is like running from your own shadow. The longer you avoid it, the larger it becomes. But the moment you stop, breathe, and turn toward it, the shadow shrinks. It loses its power. It becomes something you can understand instead of something you fear. Facing yourself is one of the bravest things you will ever do. It requires honesty, patience, compassion, and courage. It means acknowledging the parts of you that hurt, the insecurities you hide behind jokes, the sadness you hide behind anger, the exhaustion you hide behind productivity, the loneliness you hide behind relationships, the fear you hide behind confidence. You begin to see that all the things you tried to hide were simply parts of you that needed love, attention, and understanding. Not judgment, not shame, not avoidance. When you finally sit with your emotions, you realize they're not as powerful as you imagined. The sadness you feared becomes a message. The anger you ignored becomes a protector who simply wants to be heard. The fear that controlled you becomes a sign of where healing is needed. The loneliness becomes a reminder that you need deeper connection with yourself. Emotions are not enemies, they are teachers, they are signals. They are guides showing you what is unresolved, what is unbalanced, and what is asking for your attention. People often fear that facing themselves will break them, but the opposite is true. Running is what breaks you. Suppressing your emotions drains your energy. Avoiding your pain keeps it alive. Ignoring your truth creates tension and inner conflict. But when you face yourself, your mind begins to relax. Your body loosens. Your heart feels lighter. You start to breathe more freely because you are no longer carrying the weight of avoidance. Healing is not about becoming someone new. It is about returning to who you were before the world told you to hide your emotions. It is about peeling back the layers of fear, self-judgment, shame, and doubt that were placed on you. It is about rediscovering the softness, the clarity, the compassion, and the strength that were always within you. Healing is not adding something to yourself. It is removing everything that is not you. Facing your inner world also teaches you that emotions are temporary. No matter how strong they feel, no emotion lasts forever. They rise, peak, and fade. They move like waves. When you run from emotions, they chase you. But when you sit with them, they eventually pass. This simple truth liberates you from fear. You no longer worry that sadness will destroy you or that fear will control you forever. You realize you can survive emotions simply by allowing them to exist. Healing also requires forgiving yourself not for doing something wrong, but for being human. For the mistakes you made when you didn't know better. For the emotions you didn't understand. For the times you reacted from pain instead of wisdom. For the habits you used to cope. For the days you survived instead of thriving. Forgiving yourself does not mean excusing harmful behavior. It means acknowledging your humanity and understanding that growth comes from awareness, not punishment. When you stop running from yourself, you begin developing a deeper relationship with your own mind. You learn to talk to yourself gently. You learn to ask why you feel what you feel. You learn to sit with discomfort without panicking. You learn to breathe through difficult moments instead of forcing them away. You learn to observe your thoughts without believing all of them. This inner relationship becomes the foundation of peace. When you become your own safe space, nothing outside you can easily break you. Healing also teaches you patience. You realize that growth is not linear. Some days you feel strong and clear. Other days you feel confused and overwhelmed. This is normal. You do not judge a tree for having cloudy days or rainy seasons. Life moves in cycles. Healing moves in cycles. Growth moves in cycles. When you understand this, you stop being harsh with yourself. You allow yourself to grow at your own pace. Facing your inner world does not mean fixing everything at once. It means taking one gentle step at a time, one truth at a time, one breath at a time. You do not need to heal the entire past. You only need to be present with what hurts today. Every moment you choose awareness over avoidance, you heal a small part of yourself. Every time you choose understanding over judgment, you rewrite old patterns. Every time you choose courage over fear, you build a stronger inner foundation. And slowly, without forcing anything, your heart becomes lighter, your mind becomes clearer, and your soul becomes calmer. When you stop running from yourself, you reclaim your power. You stop being afraid of your own emotions. You stop feeling threatened by your inner world. You stop searching for happiness outside because you finally understand that inner peace comes from within. You become someone who can handle difficult feelings without drowning in them, who can face challenges without collapsing, and who can stay centered even when life becomes uncertain. In the end, facing yourself is the greatest act of self-love. It is the moment you declare that your healing matters, your peace matters, and your inner world deserves your attention. When you embrace this journey, you no longer chase happiness, you grow into it. You become someone who can stay strong, stable, and positive even when life hurts, because you no longer fear your own depth. You become whole. 10. True happiness emerges when you stop demanding life to be easy. Strength is built in the space between pain and understanding. One of the hardest but most liberating truths in Buddhism is this: life was never meant to be easy. Yet most people spend their entire existence demanding ease, comfort, smooth paths, quick results, perfect emotions, and a life without obstacles. The moment life becomes difficult, they assume something is wrong. They panic, they resist, they collapse, or they compare themselves to others who appear to be living effortlessly. But the reality is simple and unchanging. Life becomes meaningful not in the easy moments, but in the moments that challenge your spirit, shape your character, and force you to grow in ways you never expected. Happiness is not the absence of struggle. It is the ability to remain grounded, wise, and balanced through struggle. When you stop demanding life to be easy, you stop fighting with reality. You stop seeing challenges as personal failures or punishments. You stop interpreting obstacles as signs that you are not worthy. Instead, you begin to understand that every difficulty is part of the natural flow of existence. Every pain carries a lesson. Every delay carries a purpose. Every heartbreak expands your heart. Every setback refines your spirit. You begin to see that growth does not occur when everything is comfortable. It occurs when you are pushed beyond your familiar limits. Most suffering happens not because life is hard, but because the mind keeps insisting that it shouldn't be hard. This inner resistance, this belief that life owes you comfort, creates an emotional war inside you. You expect people to treat you perfectly, but they won't. You expect success to come without failure, but it won't. You expect relationships to be smooth without miscommunication, but they won't. You expect healing to happen quickly, but it won't. When you demand life to match your ideal image, you are constantly disappointed. But when you accept that challenges are part of the human experience, your heart softens, your mind relaxes, and your suffering decreases instantly. This acceptance does not make your pain disappear. It simply removes the extra layers of stress, self-blame, and hopelessness that make the pain heavier. When you face reality without demanding it to be different, you save your energy for growth instead of wasting it on resistance. You begin to see life with clarity rather than through the lens of frustration. Buddhism teaches that true strength is quiet, gentle, and steady. It is the strength of the bamboo that bends in the storm instead of breaking. It is the strength of water that flows around obstacles instead of fighting them. It is the strength of the mountain that stands unmoved even when the wind roars. This strength is born in the space between pain and understanding. When you sit with your pain instead of running from it, when you breathe through the discomfort instead of denying it, when you listen to your emotions instead of suppressing them, a new kind of wisdom emerges. You begin to realize that pain is not a barrier, it is a doorway. Hard days teach you patience. Difficult people teach you boundaries. Sadness teaches you compassion. Failure teaches you humility. Loss teaches you acceptance. Uncertainty teaches you trust. Even loneliness teaches you to develop a relationship with yourself. Every challenge becomes a piece of your spiritual training. The more you grow through your hardships, the less afraid you become of future ones. When you stop demanding life to be easy, you stop feeling like a victim. You stop thinking life is unfair. You stop blaming yourself for every difficulty. Instead, you start taking responsibility for your inner state. You begin to ask, "What is this moment teaching me?" instead of, "Why is this happening to me?" That shift alone is enough to rewrite your entire emotional world. True happiness grows when you stop believing that ease equals peace. Peace comes from within you, not from outside circumstances. There are people with difficult lives who stay kind, calm, and hopeful. And there are people with comfortable lives who are constantly stressed and unhappy. What separates them is not their situation, it is their mindset. The peaceful person has learned to work with life instead of against it. They have learned to accept difficulty instead of avoid it. They have learned to find meaning inside discomfort instead of demanding pleasure at every moment. When you stop expecting life to remove all pain, you become stronger in a way that no external achievement can replicate. You discover abilities you didn't know you had. You develop patience you never thought you could practice. You build emotional resilience that allows you to stand firm even when everything is falling apart. You learn to navigate storms without losing your center. You stop breaking easily because you understand that breaking and rebuilding are part of growth. This strength becomes the foundation of lasting happiness. It is not a fragile happiness that disappears when life gets messy. It is not a conditional happiness that depends on everything going your way. It is a grounded happiness that stays with you even in uncertainty, even in pain, even in fear. You stop being afraid of hard days because you know they carry wisdom. You stop being afraid of challenges because you know you can overcome them. You stop being afraid of change because you trust that life is always guiding you toward growth. True happiness is not light, it is depth. It is not the absence of pain, it is the presence of wisdom. It is the quiet knowing that you can endure, adapt, and rise again. It is the calmness you feel when you stop running from life and start meeting it as it is. You learn that joy and pain can coexist. You learn that growth and struggle walk together. You learn that peace is not found in perfect conditions, but in a settled heart. In the end, you stop asking for an easy life and start asking for a strong mind. You stop waiting for the world to be gentle and start becoming gentle with yourself. You stop hoping for a life without pain and start building a life where pain can enter without destroying you. That is true happiness, the kind that stays with you through every chapter of life, not just the bright ones. 11. You become truly happy when you let life flow. Control creates tension. Flow creates freedom. Most people spend their lives trying to control everything around them: people, outcomes, emotions, situations, timelines, and even the future. They believe that happiness comes from getting life to obey their expectations. They confuse safety with control, peace with predictability, and success with forcing everything to work out exactly the way they want. But Buddhism teaches the opposite. The more you try to control life, the more life resists you. The more you cling to fixed plans, the more anxious you become when things shift. The more you demand certainty, the more fragile your happiness becomes. True peace does not come from controlling the flow of life. It comes from learning how to flow with life. Every moment of suffering is rooted in some form of inner rigidity. You become stressed when life does not follow your plans. You become disappointed when people do not meet your expectations. You become fearful when the future does not give you clear answers. You become frustrated when things change before you are ready. You become hurt when outcomes unfold differently than you imagined. This rigidity turns the natural movements of life into a personal battle. But life is not attacking you, it is simply moving. The same way rivers move, winds move, seasons move, and time moves. Nothing in nature stays still, everything flows. And when you align with this flow instead of resisting it, the tension inside you dissolves. Flow does not mean giving up responsibility or becoming passive. It does not mean letting life push you anywhere. It means understanding the difference between what you can control and what you cannot. You can control your actions, your reactions, your decisions, your effort, and your character. But you cannot control how people feel, how life unfolds, how time moves, or how outcomes appear. Flow is the wisdom of working with life, instead of fighting against its natural direction. When you stop trying to control everything, you begin to notice how much energy you were wasting. You see how much stress you were carrying. You realize that half of your worry was not caused by life, but by your own expectations of life. Flow teaches you to trust the natural rhythm of existence. You begin to understand that everything arrives when it is meant to, leaves when it has served its purpose, and unfolds in a timeline far wiser than your own. Most people fear letting go because they believe control protects them. They think if they stop forcing outcomes, their life will fall apart. But the truth is that forcing creates far more damage than letting go. Forcing keeps you stuck in situations that no longer serve you. Forcing blinds you to better paths. Forcing keeps you clinging to people who are not good for your peace. Forcing restricts your growth by holding you in places you have already outgrown. When you force life, you shrink your possibilities. When you flow with life, you expand them. Flow teaches you patience. It shows you that not everything needs to happen today. Not every question needs an immediate answer. Not every dream needs to be rushed. And not every problem needs to be solved right away. You begin to appreciate the timing of things instead of panicking over delays. You learn to rest in uncertainty instead of fighting it. You learn to trust that clarity always comes, just not always when you demand it. Flow also teaches you resilience. When you stop resisting change, change becomes easier to adapt to. When you stop fearing uncertainty, uncertainty becomes an opportunity for growth. When you stop gripping tightly, losing becomes less painful. When you stop demanding perfection, imperfection becomes beautiful. Flow allows you to move through life with a calm heart, even when things are unpredictable, because you no longer depend on predictability for peace. Another powerful aspect of flow is emotional flexibility. Most people feel unhappy because they resist their own emotions. They want to feel happy all the time, peaceful all the time, motivated all the time, confident all the time. But emotions, like everything else, come and go. When you flow with your emotions instead of judging them, you stop making yourself wrong for being human. You allow sadness to come without believing it defines you. You allow fear to rise without letting it control you. You allow confusion without assuming something is broken. You allow joy without fearing it will disappear. You realize that emotions are waves, and flowing with them is far easier than trying to hold them still. Flow also transforms relationships. When you stop trying to control how people think, feel, or behave, you stop getting hurt by their unpredictability. You stop expecting them to give you what they cannot. You stop demanding that they change to fit your needs. You begin to accept them as they are. You communicate with clarity instead of fear. You maintain boundaries without guilt. You love without attachment. This creates healthier, more peaceful relationships where connection grows naturally instead of being forced through pressure. Flow teaches you that life becomes lighter the moment you stop gripping it so tightly. You begin to see possibilities where before you only saw problems. You begin to notice blessings where before you only saw obstacles. You begin to respond with clarity instead of reacting with panic. You become someone who can adapt, adjust, and evolve gracefully. Happiness becomes more stable because it is no longer tied to controlling the world. It is anchored in your ability to flow with the world. Most importantly, flow reconnects you with your inner wisdom. When the mind is not busy forcing, pushing, or controlling, it becomes open, calm, spacious. From that inner space, deeper understanding rises. You begin to notice signs you once ignored. You see paths you once overlooked. You hear the quiet guidance of your intuition. You make decisions without fear. You understand what is ready to leave and what is ready to enter. Flow brings you closer to yourself. In the end, flowing with life is not just a spiritual practice, it is a way of living that transforms every part of your journey. You stop fearing change because you trust your ability to adapt. You stop chasing certainty because you trust the intelligence of life. You stop demanding ease because you understand that growth requires challenge. You stop fighting what is happening because you trust that everything is working for your awakening, even the difficult parts. When you learn to flow, you become unshakable, not because life gets easier, but because you stop fighting the natural currents of existence. You rise above old fears, old attachments, old expectations, and old habits. Life becomes easier not because the world changes, but because you change. And in that transformation, you discover a happiness that lasts, not the kind that depends on controlling life, but the kind that emerges when you learn to flow with it. 12. Joy becomes unshakable when you build it from within, not from achievements, approval, or external success. One of the most profound realizations you will ever experience is understanding that true joy cannot be taken from you when it is built on the inside. Most people try to build their happiness on unstable foundations, on success, on praise, on relationships, on appearance, on achievement, on validation, on money, on control. They believe that the right situation or the right person or the right accomplishment will finally give them lasting joy. But Buddhism teaches that anything built on the outside will crumble the moment life shifts, the moment people change, the moment circumstances fall apart, or the moment time does what time always does: move forward. Unshakable joy comes only when you learn to build it from within yourself, from a place that external events cannot reach or destroy. People often feel empty even after achieving their goals because they misunderstand the nature of joy. They believe joy comes from getting something, so they chase endlessly more achievements, more attention, more opportunities, more affection, more milestones. But the finish line keeps moving. No matter how much they gain, they still feel a quiet longing inside, a space that nothing external seems capable of filling. This happens because external successes can only excite you temporarily. They cannot nourish your soul. They cannot heal your mind. They cannot give you peace. They cannot stabilize your emotions. They cannot replace the inner work that true joy requires. When your joy depends on the outside world, you become vulnerable to everything. A single criticism destroys your confidence. A single failure breaks your spirit. A single disappointment ruins your day. A single mistake makes you question your worth. You live in emotional instability because your happiness is tied to things you cannot control. Buddhism teaches that when your joy is external, you become a prisoner of circumstances. But when your joy is internal, you become free. Building inner joy begins with understanding who you are without the world's labels. Most people define themselves based on roles: student, employee, parent, partner, achiever, success story, failure story. But these labels are temporary. They shift with time. Inner joy requires discovering the self beneath all these identities, the self that is aware, compassionate, present, and connected to the calmness within. When you find that version of yourself, you realize that joy is not something you create by doing more. It is something you uncover by becoming more aware, more aligned, and more connected to your inner being. Inner joy grows when you stop comparing your journey with anyone else's. Comparison is one of the biggest killers of happiness. You can be having a peaceful life, but the moment you compare it to someone else's highlight reel, it suddenly feels empty. You start believing your life is behind, your achievements are small, your progress is slow. But comparison is a mental illusion. It shows you someone else's results without showing you their struggles. Buddhism teaches that your path is uniquely yours. No two journeys are meant to look the same. When you stop comparing, you stop poisoning your own joy with unrealistic expectations. Inner joy is also built through self-respect, through honoring your limits, your values, your boundaries, and your growth. When you betray yourself to please others, you lose joy. When you lower your standards to be accepted, you lose joy. When you say yes to things your heart says no to, you lose joy. When you stay in situations that drain your energy, you lose joy. Self-respect is one of the purest sources of inner happiness because it aligns your actions with your truth. When you live in alignment, your heart feels light, your mind feels clear, and your joy becomes natural. Another pillar of inner joy is emotional resilience. Life will always present challenges, loss, disappointment, rejection, uncertainty, heartbreak, failure. When your happiness depends on everything going smoothly, you will be hurt constantly. But when your joy comes from within, you can remain steady even when life becomes chaotic. Resilience does not mean you never feel pain. It means you are not destroyed by pain. It means you understand that emotions pass, problems pass, storms pass, and you have the strength to endure them without losing yourself. This kind of resilience makes your joy deeper because it is not fragile. Inner joy also grows through presence by being fully here, fully alive, fully aware in each moment. Most people miss the small joys life offers because they are always chasing something in the future or reliving something in the past. They overlook the calming warmth of sunlight, the softness of a breeze, the comfort of silence, the beauty of simple moments, the miracle of breath. When you slow down enough to notice life, you realize joy is everywhere, not in grand achievements, but in small moments of awareness. This shift in attention naturally lifts your spirit. Inner joy requires forgiveness, not for others, but for yourself. So many people carry guilt, regret, and shame that weigh heavily on their happiness. They punish themselves for past decisions, past versions of themselves, past actions taken when they were confused or hurt. But inner joy cannot grow in a heart filled with self-blame. You must forgive yourself for not knowing better at the time. You must forgive yourself for surviving in the only ways you knew. You must forgive yourself for the mistakes that shaped your wisdom. Self-forgiveness frees space in your heart for joy to enter. Another source of inner joy is gratitude. Not forced gratitude, not fake positivity, but genuine awareness of what you have rather than obsessing over what you lack. Gratitude grounds you. It lifts you out of cycles of fear. It softens your emotions. It opens your heart to possibilities. When you practice gratitude consistently, you train your mind to notice abundance instead of scarcity, progress instead of delays, blessings instead of problems. And when your perspective shifts, your joy naturally expands. Inner joy also grows from simplicity, reducing the mental clutter, emotional noise, and unnecessary complexities that weigh you down. People often think they need more to be happy, but Buddhism teaches the opposite. Happiness grows when you need less. When your mind is not constantly stimulated, distracted, overloaded, or overwhelmed, joy has space to rise. Simplicity creates mental clarity, emotional spaciousness, and spiritual calmness, a perfect environment for joy to thrive. Finally, inner joy grows from self-connection, spending time alone, listening to your thoughts, understanding your emotions, checking in with your needs, nurturing your inner peace. Most people lose joy because they lose connection with themselves. They live externally, consumed by responsibilities, expectations, and noise. But inner joy requires intimacy with your own soul. When you make time to be with yourself in quietness, you reconnect with the most stable source of happiness that exists, your inner being. In the end, joy becomes unshakable when it is no longer tied to external events. It becomes steady when you no longer need life to be perfect. It becomes constant when you no longer depend on others to validate your worth. It becomes peaceful when you finally understand that happiness was never something to chase. It was something waiting inside you all along. 13. You become truly unbreakable when you stop searching for happiness outside and start cultivating inner stillness. There comes a point in life where you finally realize that searching for happiness outside yourself is like searching for your own reflection in a broken mirror. No matter how hard you try, something will always look incomplete. People spend years running after things they believe will make them happy: approval from others, the perfect relationship, constant entertainment, success, recognition, possessions, and comfort. Yet even after achieving those things, Many still feel something missing, a quiet emptiness they cannot explain. Buddhism teaches that this emptiness arises because people try to fill an inner void with outer solutions. But happiness is not something you find in the world. It is something you build within yourself through inner stillness, inner awareness, and inner alignment. Inner stillness is the ability to be calm within yourself, regardless of what is happening outside. It is the ability to sit with your thoughts without being controlled by them, to sit with your emotions without being overwhelmed by them, and to sit with your experiences without needing them to be different. Most people are uncomfortable with stillness because silence exposes the unresolved parts of the mind. When you are still, you feel the discomfort you've been running from. You hear the thoughts you've been burying. You meet the emotions you've been avoiding. You discover truths about yourself that you may have tried to suppress. But stillness is not your enemy. It is your gateway to inner peace. When you practice stillness, you begin to see that happiness is not a momentary feeling, but a state of being that grows naturally when your mind is no longer pulled in every direction. Most people lose happiness not because life is difficult, but because their mind is constantly scattered, jumping from past regrets to future fears, from comparison to insecurity, from overthinking to emotional exhaustion. Stillness gathers the mind back into one place, the present. And the present moment is always manageable, always peaceful, always gentle compared to the storms created by the past and future. Inner stillness also teaches you how to detach from the noise of the world. The world constantly tells you who you should be, how you should think, what you should want, how you should look, and what you must achieve to be worthy. When your mind is restless, you absorb all this noise without questioning it, and it shapes your identity in ways that have nothing to do with your true self. But when your mind becomes still, the noise loses its grip. You begin to hear your inner voice again, the voice that knows your values, your desires, your truth, your boundaries, and your purpose. This quiet self-knowing is one of the strongest foundations of inner happiness. Stillness also helps you respond to life rather than react to it. When your mind is restless, you react out of fear, anger, impatience, insecurity, or confusion. You say things you don't mean. You make decisions that don't align with your values. You let emotions push you into actions you later regret. But when the mind is still, you create space between the emotion and the response. You learn to observe your feelings without becoming them. You learn to pause before speaking. You learn to reflect before acting. This emotional intelligence makes you stronger, not because you never feel pain, but because you no longer become controlled by it. Inner stillness also teaches you that nothing external can guarantee peace. You can have a stable job and still feel anxious. You can have a loving partner and still feel lonely. You can achieve your goals and still feel empty. You can surround yourself with people and still feel disconnected. This happens because peace is not created by external stability. It is created by internal understanding. When your mind is at war with itself, nothing outside can save you. But when your mind is at peace with itself, nothing outside can break you. Stillness reveals another profound truth. Most of your suffering is self-created, not intentionally, not consciously, but through the habits of the mind: overthinking, resisting reality, clinging to expectations, replaying old wounds, fearing uncertainty, and seeking validation. When you enter stillness, you see these patterns clearly. You realize that much of your pain comes from stories your mind created, not from reality itself. This realization is liberating because it shows you that the key to happiness has always been within your control. Another gift of stillness is self-compassion. When you stop running from yourself, you begin to understand yourself. You see why you reacted the way you did, why you formed certain habits, why certain fears exist, why certain wounds remain unhealed. You begin to treat yourself with more kindness. You stop judging your emotions so harshly. You stop criticizing yourself for being human. You begin to accept your imperfections with softness instead of shame. And the more compassion you give yourself, the more peace you experience. Inner stillness also strengthens your connection to intuition. Intuition is the quiet guidance of the soul, subtle, gentle, but deeply wise. In a noisy mind, intuition is drowned out by fear, doubt, and overthinking. But in stillness, intuition becomes clear. You begin to sense which path feels right. You begin to feel which choices align with your authentic self. You begin to understand which relationships nourish your spirit and which ones drain it. Intuition becomes a spiritual compass, guiding you toward a life filled with peace and purpose. Stillness also transforms your relationship with impermanence. Instead of fearing change, you begin to see change as part of the natural flow of life. Instead of clinging to moments, you learn to appreciate them fully without needing them to last forever. Instead of resisting endings, you recognize that every ending is a transition into something new. This acceptance makes you emotionally unbreakable. You no longer crumble when life shifts, because your peace is not attached to any one moment. It flows with life. Inner stillness also gives you the ability to enjoy life more deeply. When your mind is quiet, you savor the simple things: the taste of food, the warmth of sunlight, the feeling of breath moving through the body, the beauty of nature, the presence of loved ones, the comfort of rest, the softness of a moment. Small joys become richer. Ordinary moments become meaningful. You begin to see that happiness is not hidden in distant achievements, but in the small experiences you were once too distracted to notice. Most importantly, inner stillness makes you emotionally independent. You stop relying on others for validation, attention, or approval. You stop depending on external events for peace. You stop measuring your worth through the eyes of the world. You become whole within yourself. You learn that you are enough not because of what you do, but because of who you are. And once you reach this place, nothing outside can shake your foundation. In the end, inner stillness is not just a spiritual practice, it is a way of living. It is the path that leads you back home to yourself. It is the space where happiness grows, not in bursts, but in quiet stability. When you cultivate inner stillness, you become unbreakable, not because life becomes easier, but because your heart becomes wiser, your mind becomes calmer, and your spirit becomes stronger. You no longer chase happiness, you carry it. 14. Peace comes when you stop forcing healing. Growth happens naturally when you learn to sit with yourself. One of the most overlooked truths in Buddhism is that healing cannot be forced. People want instant relief from pain, quick solutions to emotional wounds, fast answers to inner confusion, and immediate clarity whenever life becomes overwhelming. They want to wake up one day and never feel sadness again, never experience anxiety again, never have doubts, never feel lonely, never feel insecure, never carry emotional scars. But healing does not work like that. Healing is not a switch you turn on. It is not a project you rush. It is not a race you can win by pushing harder. Healing is a slow unfolding, a steady softening, a gentle reconnection with the parts of yourself you have ignored or abandoned. Peace begins when you stop forcing yourself to heal and instead learn to sit with yourself calmly, kindly, and without judgment. Most people unknowingly make their pain heavier by fighting it. They get upset with themselves for feeling sad. They feel embarrassed for feeling anxious. They judge themselves for falling apart. They blame themselves for not healing fast enough. They compare their healing pace with others and feel left behind. They push themselves to look strong even when their heart feels exhausted. But resistance turns emotional pain into deeper suffering. The more you push your emotions away, the more they push back. The more you hurry your healing, the slower it feels. The more you demand yourself to be fine, the more disconnected you feel from your truth. Healing needs honesty. It means recognizing how you truly feel, not how you wish you felt. It means accepting your emotions instead of trying to erase them. It means staying with discomfort instead of escaping it. You cannot heal what you refuse to feel. You cannot calm what you refuse to notice. You cannot change what you keep avoiding. Buddhism teaches that healing starts the moment you say, "This is where I am right now, and that is okay." Not perfect, not ideal, not painless, but okay. When you learn to sit with yourself, you begin to understand your emotions instead of fearing them. You see that sadness is not weakness. It is a signal that something meaningful inside you needs care. Anxiety is not a defect. It is a sign that your mind feels overloaded or is trying to protect you from uncertainty. Loneliness is not a punishment. It is an invitation to reconnect with yourself more deeply. Anger is not something to hide. It is a signal that your boundaries were crossed. When you listen to your emotions as teachers instead of enemies, you begin to understand their message. Healing also needs patience. Wounds that took years to form will not fade in days. Fears shaped by past experiences cannot disappear overnight. Habits you built to protect yourself will not vanish instantly. Expecting instant healing is like planting a seed and demanding it bloom the next morning. Growth takes time. Trust takes time. Acceptance takes time. Inner peace takes time. But this time is not wasted. It is the ground where transformation grows. Another reason people struggle to heal is because they expect healing to feel easy. But healing often feels like breaking before becoming whole. It requires facing truths you once avoided. It requires releasing attachments you held tightly. It requires letting go of identities that no longer fit. It requires allowing old emotions to rise so they can finally be processed. It requires choosing growth over comfort, awareness over avoidance. Healing will stretch you, test you, expose you, and sometimes overwhelm you. But every discomfort supports your growth. You are not breaking, you are opening. Sitting with yourself also teaches self-compassion. You start respecting your limits instead of criticizing them. You begin speaking to yourself gently instead of harshly. You begin realizing that pain is not failure. It is part of being human. You begin holding yourself with the same kindness you give others. When you stop attacking yourself for hurting, you give your heart the safety it needs to heal. Compassion becomes the medicine your mind has been waiting for. Another deep truth is that healing happens in layers. You may think you've healed something only to feel the pain again months or years later. This does not mean you failed. It means you reached a deeper layer that wasn't ready before. Healing is not linear. You move forward, then backward, then forward again. You feel strong one day and sensitive the next. You feel clear one moment and confused the next. This rhythm is natural. When you accept this, you stop judging your progress and begin trusting the process. Healing also requires letting go of the belief that someone else will save you. Many people wait for a person, a situation, or an event to fix their pain. They believe a relationship will remove their loneliness, success will remove their insecurity, forgiveness from others will remove their wounds. But healing is an inner path. Others can support you, but they cannot heal you. Healing happens when you take responsibility for your own heart, your thoughts, your actions, and your life. This responsibility is not a weight, it is power. Healing also becomes easier when you release the timelines you created in your mind. You do not need clarity by a certain age. You do not need your life figured out by a certain year. You do not need to move on by someone else's standards. Growth cannot be rushed. Healing cannot be scheduled. Your journey is not a race. When you allow yourself to move at your natural pace, Your heart relaxes and healing unfolds naturally. Another important truth is that healing is not about returning to who you once were. Many people say, "I just want to feel like myself again." But healing does not bring back your old self. Your old self was shaped by old wounds, fears, patterns, and past versions of life. Healing shapes you into someone wiser, gentler, stronger, calmer, and more aligned with truth. You do not go backward. You grow forward. You do not recover an old identity. You create a new one rooted in awareness and compassion. Inner stillness is essential to healing because it lets you hear your deeper self. Stillness is where wisdom speaks, intuition rises, and your heart shows what it needs. In stillness, you discover which parts of you need care, which habits need change, which fears need understanding, and which patterns need release. Stillness brings clarity, and clarity brings healing. When you stop forcing healing, you also stop comparing your path with others. Comparison creates pressure. It tells you that you should be further ahead, stronger, faster, or more emotionally steady. But comparison ignores your unique past, wounds, challenges, and growth. Healing is not a race where everyone finishes together. It is deeply personal. When you honor your individuality, healing feels more real and less stressful. The most beautiful part of releasing force is that healing begins to feel natural. You stop fighting your emotions. You accept them. You stop demanding answers. You trust they will arrive. You stop chasing inner peace. You allow it to rise on its own. Your heart feels less tight. Your mind feels less crowded. Your spirit feels less burdened. You realize healing was always happening beneath the surface. You simply needed to stop interfering. In the end, peace arrives when you stop rushing your journey. Healing arrives when you stop demanding instant change. Growth arrives when you stop pushing and start allowing. Stillness becomes your guide. Compassion becomes your base. Trust becomes your way forward. And slowly, gently, inevitably, you become someone who can sit with their own heart without fear, resistance, or judgment. That is where true healing begins. That is where peace grows. That is where you find yourself again. 15. The mind becomes calm when you stop believing every thought. Freedom begins when you learn to observe, not absorb. One of the deepest sources of human suffering is the belief that every thought the mind creates is true. Most people never question the thousands of thoughts passing through their minds each day. They accept them, take them in, react to them, and let them shape their emotions, self-worth, fears, and view of life. But Buddhism teaches that the mind is like the sky, wide, open, and spacious, and thoughts are like passing clouds, temporary forms that appear and disappear. They are not permanent, not facts, and not ultimate truth. Freedom begins when you stop absorbing every thought and start observing your inner world with awareness and distance. The mind can create a full storm even when nothing is wrong. It can invent fears that never happen, exaggerate small problems until they feel huge, replay old wounds until they feel fresh, and build imaginary outcomes that scare you, even though they exist only in thought. When you believe every thought, you become trapped in illusions made by your mind. But when you learn to step back and watch your thoughts as mental events, not commands, not identity, not reality, you begin to feel an emotional freedom many never experience. Observing thoughts does not mean ignoring them. It means seeing them clearly without being ruled by them. It means noticing when a thought comes from fear, insecurity, memory, projection, overthinking, or habit. It means understanding that your mind is trying to protect you, not harm you. When you observe your thoughts, you separate who you are from the stories in your mind. You realize, I am not my thoughts. I am the one watching them. This shift is the base of inner peace. Most thoughts are automatic. They come from past experiences, old beliefs, hidden fears, and emotional patterns learned long ago. Some thoughts help, but many are reactions that do not reflect your true awareness. When you stop blindly trusting these automatic thoughts, you end unnecessary suffering. You begin to see that the mind offers interpretations, not truths. A powerful part of awareness is noticing that the mind often mistakes repetition for truth. If you think something often, like, "I'm not good enough, people will leave me, something bad will happen, I can't trust myself," the thought becomes a habit. The mind takes repetition as proof, but repetition does not make something true, it only makes it familiar. When you observe these thoughts, you stop feeding them with belief, and slowly they lose their strength. The mind also tends to jump to the worst conclusion, imagining the most negative outcome. This is an old survival response meant to protect you in dangerous moments. But in modern life, the mind often creates danger where none exists. A simple message left unread turns into a story of rejection. A mistake turns into a belief of failure. A small setback becomes a sign that everything will fall apart. When you absorb these thoughts, your emotions react as if the threat is real. You feel anxiety, fear, tension, and sadness. But when you observe a catastrophic thought without believing it, it fades. You create space between thought and emotion, and in that space, peace begins to grow. Another way the mind creates suffering is through attachment to certain stories. The mind clings to ideas like, "I always suffer, I can never change, I will always be alone, people don't understand me, life is unfair, my past defines me." These stories shape your identity and limit your growth. But they are not who you truly are. They are mental habits formed through pain. When you observe these patterns, you see how they appear and disappear. They slowly lose their grip on you. Observation breaks the illusion that thoughts are permanent. A key Buddhist teaching is that thoughts gain power only when you engage with them. A thought appears. You grab onto it. You analyze it. You argue with it. You fear it. You follow it. You feed it. You stack more thoughts on top of it. And before you notice, a random thought that lasted 1 second turns into an emotional storm that lasts hours or days. But when you let thoughts pass like clouds without attachment, they fade on their own. The mind becomes quieter, not because thoughts stop, but because you stop holding onto them. Learning to observe your thoughts also helps you respond to life with clarity. When you are no longer controlled by the mind's stories, you see situations clearly instead of through fear or insecurity. You communicate more clearly, make wiser choices, and stay centered even during stress. You respond with awareness instead of reacting with panic or impulse. This emotional balance is one of the greatest gifts of awareness. Observing your thoughts also deepens your understanding of suffering. You begin to see how the mind creates pain by replaying the past or worrying about the future. You realize that most distress does not come from the moment itself, but from thoughts about the moment. The present moment is usually manageable, your breath, your body, your surroundings, but the mind pulls you into timelines that are not real. When you stay present, suffering fades or becomes lighter. One of the most powerful experiences of observing thought is recognizing the spaciousness of your awareness. Most people feel trapped inside their minds because they identify with every thought. But when you observe your mind from awareness, you see that your thoughts are small compared to the vastness of your consciousness. There is more space inside you than thoughts. There is more clarity inside you than confusion. There is more peace inside you than noise. You simply need to access it by stepping back from mental habits. Another powerful result of not believing every thought is emotional healing. Many emotional wounds remain because the mind keeps repeating the story tied to the pain. When you observe the story instead of engaging with it, the emotional hold weakens. You begin to heal because you stop reopening the wound through repeated thinking. You allow space for new perspectives, new truths, and new emotional experiences to appear. Observing thoughts is also the foundation of true self-awareness. You stop mixing your identity with temporary mental activity. You stop defining yourself by passing thoughts. You begin building an identity based on values, presence, clarity, and compassion rather than fear or assumption. You become someone who can remain steady even when the mind is busy, because you no longer treat every thought as truth. In the end, the mind becomes peaceful not when thoughts disappear, but when you learn to see them clearly and let them pass. Freedom begins when you realize that while you cannot choose which thoughts appear, you can choose whether to believe them. This awareness is what separates suffering from peace, panic from clarity, and confusion from wisdom. When you stop absorbing every thought and start observing your mind with gentle, patient awareness, you discover a peace that nothing external can disturb. You become free. As you reach the end of these lessons, one truth rises above all others. Happiness is not something you find outside yourself. It is something you grow, protect, practice, and slowly become. Most people spend their lives searching for peace in places where peace has never lived. They chase people, situations, success, and pleasure, hoping something outside will calm the storm within. But Buddhism teaches a softer, deeper, and more freeing truth. Your inner world is both the source of your suffering and the source of your peace. When you learn to understand it, respect it, and guide it, life loses its power to break you. Each lesson you explored was a doorway into your inner world. You learned that pain is not punishment, it is a message. You learned that the present moment is the only place where peace can exist. You learned that not everything you carry belongs to you, and that letting go is an act of self-respect. You learned that acceptance is not weakness, but the start of freedom. You learned that thoughts are not facts, and the mind finds peace when you stop believing every story it tells. You learned that resisting life creates suffering, while moving with life creates ease. You learned that emotions are not enemies, they are guides. You learned that gratitude, stillness, and presence can turn even dark days into quiet moments of change. You learned that healing cannot be rushed, and that sitting with yourself is not punishment, but returning home. You learned that joy becomes steady when it grows from within. All these teachings point to the same truth. Your inner world shapes the quality of your outer life. A peaceful mind sees possibility where an anxious mind sees danger. A calm heart survives storms that a restless heart cannot. A present mind experiences life fully, while a distracted mind misses what matters. When your inner world is balanced, even hard moments cannot steal your peace. When your inner world is chaotic, even beautiful moments cannot make you happy. Life will always bring challenges. It will test you, stretch you, confuse you, and sometimes open you in ways you never expected. But the goal is not to escape difficulty. It is to build a mind and heart that can stay whole, even during difficulty. True strength is not avoiding pain. It is learning to remain present, grounded, and kind to yourself as pain moves through you. Real peace does not come from controlling life. It comes from trusting your ability to move through it with wisdom. Real happiness does not come from a perfect path. It comes from a conscious, aware, and awake mind. You cannot always control what happens around you, but you can always choose how you respond. You can choose presence over panic, understanding over judgment, stillness over chaos, compassion over self-criticism, awareness over autopilot, and flow over resistance. Each time you make one of these inner choices, your reality shifts, even if nothing outside changes yet. This is the quiet, deep power of self-mastery. And here is the final truth. Happiness is not loud. It is not dramatic. It does not arrive with fireworks. Happiness grows quietly. It grows in pauses. It grows in your breath. It grows in moments when you choose peace over reaction, surrender over control, understanding over fear. It grows in the spaces where you stop running from yourself and finally sit with your own heart. It grows when you stop demanding perfection from life and start appreciating life as it is. It grows when you realize that everything you were searching for already lived inside you, waiting to be noticed, cared for, and remembered. If you commit to these lessons slowly, even imperfectly, you will feel a shift inside. You will wake with less fear. You will move through your days with more clarity. You will speak to yourself with more kindness. You will notice beauty in small moments. You will stop collapsing under pressure. You will begin trusting yourself more deeply. And over time, you will become someone who is not shaken by every emotion, not ruled by every thought, and not lost in every challenge. You will become someone who carries peace, lives their truth, and moves gently yet strongly through life. Remember this. Happiness is not something you wait for. Happiness is something you build. And now, with these lessons within you, you have everything you need to begin that change, not tomorrow, not someday, but right now, in this breath, in this exact moment.